We are here on ground zero, Shambhu border. If I can ask my cameraman to just pan out. A lot of barricading has been done. But of course, the farmers here are saying that this is a do or die situation for them. The MSP and its legal guarantee being a key sticking point between both sides. The farmers are still present over here. There is no movement per se. They're headed in a good and a positive direction. Talks seem to be the only way forward between the two parties. I'm Dharamjot Kaur, bringing you the latest developments from farmers' agitation in India.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Hem Korsara, and on the show today, we're tracking the developments closely. We'll bring you the latest in a move that has been perceived to be a show of Russia's nuclear capabilities. Russian President Vladimir Putin takes a flight on the Tu-160M nuclear-capable strategic bomber that's codenamed the Blackjacks by NATO. This as the Russia-Ukraine war reaches its 2-year mark. Now, what are the implications of this? We'll explore this on the show today.
Some major optics there. And of course, along with this, also on the show today, we get you the latest on a revelation that has raised concerns of illicit procurement networks globally. Debris of a North Korean missile fired by Russia and Ukraine contained large number of components linked to US-based companies. We will be tracking this story very closely. All this and a lot more right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
The Manipur High Court tweaks its last year's order about the inclusion of Meiteis in the list of scheduled tribes. That was followed by massive ethnic violence in India's northeastern state.
The Pakistan-Punjab Assembly will convene today for its first session since the general elections on February 8th. Governor of Pakistan-Punjab officially announces the Assembly's meeting.
UK announces new package of sanctions against Russia, says it seeks to diminish President Vladimir Putin's weapons arsenal and war chest 2 years after the invasion of Ukraine.
At least 4 people are dead in a huge fire that gutted a multi-story apartment block in Spain's eastern port city of Valencia.
South Korea health alert raised to severe after mass walkout by trainee doctors. The Prime Minister says the country will maximize the use of public hospitals to respond to the growing strains on the medical system.
A Houston-based company lands America's first spaceship on the moon in over 50 years, part of a new fleet of NASA-funded uncrewed commercial robots intended to pave the way for astronaut missions later this decade.
Charlie Woods, the son of the legendary Tiger Woods, will have to wait to make his PGA Tour debut. The 15-year-old failed to qualify for the Cognizant Classic after shooting a 16-over par 86. Our top story at this hour, the Manipur High Court, it has modified its earlier order, removing a controversial part of the judgment in its March 27th ruling from last year.
Well, of course, in this ruling from last year, the High Court had directed the Manipur government to consider the inclusion of Meiteis in scheduled tribes list, and this part has now been removed from the order. You see, this direction is said to have triggered a months-long ethnic conflict in the state between the Meiteis and the tribal Kuki-Zo communities. Over 200 people have been killed in the unrest since May 2023, and tens of thousands have been internally displaced. The contentious paragraph of the High Court order said that the state government shall consider inclusion of the Meitei community in the scheduled tribe list.
Now, shortly after the order was made public, the state plunged into unrest. Violence broke out between the ethnic groups as tribal bodies appealed the High Court order. After a significant delay in the original Meitei petitioners, in the case also filed a review petition. Seeking only a modification in the contentious paragraph 17(3), the petitioners also objected to the tribal body's rights to file an appeal.
While the appeal filed by the tribal bodies remains pending before the court, the review petition of the Meitei petitioners was heard in the meantime. The Meitei petitioners had called for a change in the language of the paragraph. The court decided to delete the part altogether. Throughout the review proceedings, neither the Manipur government nor the union government filed any counter affidavit. Now, in Pakistan, the Legislative Assembly of Pakistan's Punjab will be meeting for the first time after elections later today.
Now, Governor of Pakistan's most populous province, that's Muhammad Baligur Rahman, officially announced the Assembly's first session here. Now, the session is scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. local time. It is being held primarily for the oath-taking ceremony of the newly elected members. The Speaker of the Punjab Assembly is set to administer the oath to the elected officials, formally initiating their tenure in the legislature.
The governor called the session only a day after the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz held a parliamentary party meeting under the leadership of Maryam Nawaz Sharif. Maryam Nawaz is expected to take charge as the first female chief minister of the province.
Now, according to the official results, the PMLN emerged as the largest party in the Punjab Assembly in February 8th polls. Reports say the party is in a comfortable position to form the next provincial government after its parliamentary party meeting was attended by over 200 newly elected lawmakers. A party here requires 186 members to form the government in Punjab. The PMLN, that won 137 seats alone, it's been joined by about 24 independent members and is likely to bag a significant number of reserved seats.
Imran Khan's PTI-backed independent candidates who won the elections have been asked by the party to attend the Punjab Assembly's inaugural session.
The party, which has alleged vote rigging in the polls, it's claimed an electoral victory in the state. The party has asked such candidates who it says were deprived of their seats due to rigging to protest outside the assembly. Moving on now, Israel will take part in the negotiations this weekend in Paris with the United States, Qatar and Egypt.
Now, of course, this will be on a potential deal for a ceasefire and release of hostages in Gaza. The head of Palestinian militant group Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was in Egypt this week in the strongest sign in weeks that negotiations they still remain alive.
Right. And speaking on the sidelines of a G20 foreign ministers meeting taking place in Brazil, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the United States is focused on getting an agreement to release the remaining hostages. And he also spoke on the latest U.S. veto of a Security Council resolution, saying that it was actually silent on hostages and that the timing was not the best.
The conflict in Gaza between Israel and Hamas. We're focused intensely on trying to get an agreement that results in the release of the remaining hostages and that produces an extended humanitarian ceasefire. And again, those are goals that I think virtually everyone in the G20 shares.
Foreign ministers at the G20 Group of Nations meeting in Brazil were nearly unanimous in their support for a two-state solution as the only path to peace in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
This comes even as fighting rages on in Gaza. Palestinian Enclave's health ministry has said that in Khan Younis, Israeli forces raided Nasser Medical Complex. Shortly after withdrawing from it, The World Health Organization said that it is aiming to evacuate some of the roughly 140 patients stranded there.
Whereas Israeli airstrikes continue to hit southern Gaza's Rafah on Thursday, a mosque was flattened and homes were destroyed. According to Hamas, the death toll has topped 29,000 in Gaza. In the last 24 hours, at least 97 people were reported killed in the besieged strip.
The head of Doctors Without Borders told the United Nations Security Council that children are traumatized, while the United Nations said that it is worried over the impact that an invasion of Rafah by the Israeli forces will have on the civilian community.
The UN has said that it has seen credible allegations that Palestinian women and girls have been subjected to sexual assaults, including rape, while in Israeli detention. They are further calling for a full investigation.
Now this comes as thousands of protesters marched to New York office of pro-Israel lobby group American Israel Public Affairs Committee, calling for an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war.
Crisis in the Red Sea is deepening further as Houthis have warned of escalating attacks in the critical waters.
A senior leader of the group says they have now introduced submarine weapons in continued solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The death toll, as we mentioned earlier, it's topped almost 30,000 in the Palestinian enclave.
The Houthi leader has further said that more attacks will mirror Israel's growing offensive in the besieged strip. He also added that retaliatory strikes by the US-British coalition have failed to stop its campaign.
Now this comes after Yemen's rebel group issued a statement banning vessels linked to Israel, the United States and UK from transiting the areas around the Red Sea. This includes Gulf of Aden as well as the Arabian Sea. The two notices outlining the ban were issued to shipping insurers and the firms by the Houthis' Humanitarian Operations Coordination Center.
On Thursday, a missile attack damaged a vessel off the Yemen coast. The vessel and crew were reported safe later. In a separate incident, US aircraft and an allied warship shot down 6 drones launched by Houthis, while a France frigate shot 2 other drones.
Houthis have been terrorizing commercial vessels and ships in the Red Sea since November. Its relentless attacks have forced many companies to take a longer and more expensive route around Africa. Global trade, it's been disrupted and shipping rates have increased. The key route accounts for about 12% of global maritime traffic.
The UN Conference on Trade and Development earlier said that traffic passing through Suez Canal has fallen by over 40% in the recent months. In order to tackle the rising Houthi threat, European Union even launched a naval mission on the 19th of February. The mission called ASPIDES, which means SHIELD, will begin in a few weeks with at least 4 vessels. According to officials, a US-led maritime coalition comprising of over 20 countries is already present in the region.
All right, let's now talk about the race to the White House, which is heating up to say the least. And the early voting, it's wrapped up in South Carolina.
Now, all eyes are on the crucial Republican presidential primary, which is going to be held on Saturday, where former President Donald Trump and state's former Governor Nikki Haley will face off again.
But in the lead up to it, the final push for South Carolina GOP primary is, of course, in full swing. With a day to go for the primaries, Nikki Haley is not backing down in this race.
Polls show that Nikki Haley is trailing behind the former President Donald Trump by double digits. Trump holds a dominant position in the GOP race over his only remaining major opponent.
Although, as a former South Carolina governor, Haley hopes a strong home state showing will boost her chances for the Republican nomination, despite New Hampshire's primary electorate going against her, where she lost to Trump by 11 percentage points. Haley has sounded resilient in the face of her underdog status, promising earlier this week that she will remain in the race beyond South Carolina, regardless of the outcome.
And they know when the country's future is on the line, you don't drop out. You keep fighting. In fact, you fight harder than ever. That's why I refuse to quit. South Carolina will vote on Saturday. But on Sunday, I'll still be running for president. I'm not going anywhere.
And of course, with the future of the GOP contest at stake in South Carolina primary, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has gotten us all the updates on this. Listen to this.
As early voting ended in South Carolina on Thursday evening, all eyes are now on the state's GOP primary as former President Donald Trump and the state's former Governor Nikki Haley face off on Saturday. Donald Trump is leading in the polls by a very wide margin as he focuses on issues like immigration and law and order. Haley is emphasizing on fiscal conservatism. In South Carolina, a Donald Trump win will solidify his position as the party's frontrunner and possible candidate for 2024. A Haley win, although unlikely, will make the primary race more competitive on the one hand and may potentially have an impact on the general election dynamic. Evangelical Christians, conservative voters, as well as military veterans are the key demographics to look for in South Carolina as they go to vote. Aside from the names of Haley and Trump, two other lesser-known candidates and three former candidates who suspended their campaign after the ballots were set will be listed. What's interesting is in South Carolina, the ballot will also include 3 questions on policy matters. Those results are non-binding, but what they intend to do is for the state's Republican Party to gauge voter sentiment. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
An American company has made history by becoming the first commercial outfit to put a spacecraft on the moon.
This is a Houston-based company. It has landed America's first spaceship on the moon in more than 50 years. And this comes as part of a new fleet of NASA-funded uncrewed commercial robots, which are intended to pave the way for astronaut missions later in this decade.
Now, Houston-based Intuitive Machines landed Odysseus robot near the lunar South Pole. Its landing site, Malapert, is an impact crater 300 kilometers from the lunar South Pole. While landing, it took some minutes for controllers to confirm the craft was down. But eventually, a signal was received at the control room. Staff at the company cheered and clapped at the news.
What an outstanding effort. I know this was a nail biter, but we are on the surface and we are transmitting. And welcome to the moon.
On 15th of February, Odysseus was launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. It boasts a new type of supercool liquid oxygen, liquid methane propulsion system that allows it to race through space in quick time.
The landing on the moon is an important moment, not just for the commercial exploitation of space, but for the US space program in general. Intuitive Machines has broken the United States' half-century absence from the moon's surface. You will have to go back to the last Apollo mission in 1972 for an occasion when American hardware nestled down gently on the lunar soil.
And India's premier space agency, it's concluded the final test for the Gaganyaan rocket.
The rocket is now certified for missions that can carry humans into space, and the organization has also completed the human rating of the rocket's CE-20 cryogenic engine. CE-20 engine will be used to power Gaganyaan's launch vehicle, the LVM-3.
And to qualify human rating standards, 4 CE-20 engines underwent 39 hot firing tests under different conditions. The test ran for at least 8,810 seconds as opposed to the qualification standard of just 6,350 seconds.
The CE-20 was put to test at the agency's propulsion complex in India's state of Odisha. In fact, the 7th round of checks were held at the high-altitude test facility to simulate flight conditions. Listen in.
India has a lot of rockets that are powered by liquid fueled engines. So basically liquid fueled engines are the most sophisticated to master. It is his center, the Liquid Propulsion System Center, that actually develops these engines for Indian rockets. So we're joined by Dr. Narayanan, the director of the center. So kindly tell us, you've readied all the engines that are required for the Gaganyaan program. They're just raring to go, right?
Yeah. So if you take Gaganyaan, and the developments are, first we have to human rate the LVM-3 vehicle. LVM-3 vehicle is having 3 propulsion systems, 2 solid motors, and there is a core liquid stage and the cryogenic upper stage. Now if you take all the engines are human rated. For example, one thing I can tell, if you take cryogenic upper stage, in 4 engines, we have carried out something around 40 numbers of tests and we have accumulated 9,000 seconds of test data. All tests are successful and today we have declared the engine is human rated. Take the core liquid stage, something around 25 tests are completed and we have totally completed the development and qualification and we have declared the human rated L1 stage. Same way, solid motor also we have completed the test. Thereby, in nutshell, all the propulsion systems of the vehicle is human rated.
Now, after liquid-fueled engines, ISRO is now keen on developing methane engines. Currently, 2 LOX methane engines are in the works at the agency. One of the 2 projects is trying to convert the existing cryogenic engines like the CE-20 into a methane engine. Here's more.
So also you're developing methane LOX engines for the future rockets. So tell us more.
Yeah, it is for the new generation launch vehicle, which is going to be powered by a liquid oxygen and methane propulsion system. It has got an engine working on liquid oxygen and methane with 110 tons of thrust. And the first stage will be powered by 9 engines. Second stage will have 2 engines. Upper stage will have 1 engine. It is a modular concept. Right now, we are in the process of completing the design of the engine. In fact, during the COVID time, we conceived a 20-ton engine. We carried out all experiments and we have derived a lot of data. Right now, we are in the process of completing the design of the engine and going for manufacturing through Indian industries.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. When we come back, of course, we bring you more updates on deceased Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny's mother has now accused Russian investigators of blackmailing her over the funeral of her son.
Also on the other side, millennials and Gen Z are grappling with a new phenomenon, money dysmorphia. What is money dysmorphia and how can you overcome this? We'll get you a report on this on the other side.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Two Indian businessmen meet almost entirely by chance. They put together the bones of a travel proposition. 23 years in, it's really interesting about Make My Trip is that it spawned hundreds of Rajesh McGowan.
I think the game-changing moment for me was also meeting Deep. Make My Trip was actually his idea. The market dynamics changed. A lot of capital started to come to India. I think at the core of it is it's about satisfaction and the fulfillment of achieving something. That gives us a lot more kick at Make My Trip. I believed in application. I don't think you can ever be in a situation where you know it all.
We are here on ground zero, Shambhu border. If I can ask my cameraman to just pan out. A lot of barricading has been done. But of course, the farmers here are saying that this is a do or die situation for them. The MSP and its legal guarantee being a key sticking point between both sides. The farmers are still present over here. There is no movement per se. They're headed in a good and a positive direction. Talks seem to be the only way forward between the two parties. I'm Dharamjot Kaur, bringing you the latest developments from farmers' agitation in India.
African Union leaders condemn Israel's offensive in Gaza as the most flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. The summit accuses Israel of exterminating Gaza's inhabitants and tells it to immediately end operations. Two-pronged protests take place in Democratic Republic of Congo, capital of Kinshasa. While on the one hand, protesters accuse the West of supporting the M23 rebels in the conflict-hit East, the women are fed up with the fighting in Goma. And a sculptor in Gabon transforms salvaged paper into fine art. World of Africa, at these times, only on WION World is One.
We are one, you and I. Burning in the sun, rising in the rain. One in celebration, one in pain, one in a tragedy. One for our rights, one in search of hope, one in our fights. One beyond borders, one beyond our race,
This could be one of
one
the
in the
biggest
face of adversity. We are one, you and I, and it's our right to know how and why. WION, you are more connected than you know.
This week on the West Asia Post, WHO chief calls Gaza a death zone, raises alarm over worsening health and humanitarian conditions in the besieged Strip. Why are the Arab states fearing a repeat of history once Israel invades Rafah? And Iran busts a gang selling banned iPhones. All this and much more. Watch the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis, every Friday at these times, only on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Here's what we've lined up for you on this side of the show.
The Manipur High Court tweaks its last year's order about the inclusion of Meiteis in the list of scheduled tribes. That was followed by massive ethnic violence in India's northeastern state. In a U-turn, former commissioner of WHO alleged rigging in Pakistan elections withdraws his allegation, says he had made the rigging charges at the behest of ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, which offered him a lucrative position. UK announces a new package of sanctions against Russia, says it seeks to diminish President Vladimir Putin's weapons arsenal and war chest 2 years after the invasion of Ukraine. At least 4 people are dead in a huge fire that gutted a multi-story apartment block in Spain's eastern port city of Valencia. South Korea health alert raised to severe after a mass walkout by trainee doctors. The Prime Minister says the country will maximize the use of public hospitals to respond to growing strains on the medical system. A Houston-based company lands America's first spaceship on the moon in over 50 years, part of a new fleet of NASA-funded uncrewed commercial robots intended to pave the way for astronaut missions later this decade. Charlie Woods, the son of legendary Tiger Woods, will have to wait to make his PGA Tour debut. The 15-year-old failed to qualify for the Cognizant Classic after shooting a 16-over par 86.
And our focus at this hour. The Russian president flew on a modernized Tu-160M strategic bomber in a move that's likely to be seen in the West as a pointed reminder of Moscow's nuclear capabilities. After the 30-minute flight, Vladimir Putin praised the formidable bomber as reliable and said it can be accepted into the Russian armed forces. Russian state TV, it showed the giant plane taking off from a runway belonging to the factory in Kazan, which makes the modernized supersonic aircraft. The Tu-160M is a modernized version of a Cold War-era bomber the former Soviet Union would have deployed in the event of nuclear war to deliver weapons to long distances. Analysts say Vladimir Putin is expected to easily win another 6-year term next month. This election will be held over 3 days from the 15th to the 17th of March, and the winner will be inaugurated in May. Putin made the flight at a time when Moscow and the West, of course, as you know, are at odds over Russia's war in Ukraine and the death in prison of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Some Russian and US diplomats say they do not remember a time of worse relations between the world's two biggest nuclear powers, including during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Here's more on the Tu-160 as well. The Tu-160 missile carrier bomber, it's designed to destroy targets in remote geographic areas and deep in the rear of continental theaters of operations. Work for the Intercontinental Strategic Multi-Mode Missile Carrier aircraft equipped with long-range cruise missiles was started in Tupolev Experimental Design Bureau in the 1970s. It is the largest supersonic aircraft and variable geometry wing aircraft in the history of military aviation. It is also the world's heaviest combat aircraft, having the highest gross takeoff weight among bombers. For its power and grace, the Tu-160 was unofficially named the Swan. At least 44 world records are set on the Tu-160. In particular, a flight for a closed course distance of 1,000 kilometers with a payload of 30 tons was performed at an average speed of 1,700 kilometers an hour. Unlike high-performance tactical fighters, the Tu-160 can embark on long-distance missions. The formidable bomber intimidates the enemy. It's capable of hunting down warships, and in case of conflict, the enemy targets forward bases and carriers. Bombers thus are less exposed to an attack. So that's what we know about the Tu-160. Over to you, Shivan.
Thanks, Him. Moving further from here, revelations that a North Korean missile fired by Russia in Ukraine contained parts linked to US-based firms underlines the difficulty of enforcing sanctions against Pyongyang. However, experts say it could help uncover illicit procurement networks. So a North Korean missile fired by Russia was found in Ukraine, and it's using parts from US companies. UK-based Conflict Armament Research, CAR, examined the remnants of a North Korean ballistic missile used by Russia against Ukrainian forces in Kharkiv on the 2nd of January. The investigative organization examined electronic components, including for the missile's navigation system, and it found many were recently manufactured and bore the marks of companies based in the United States. 75% of the components documented were linked to companies incorporated in the US, 16% to companies in Europe, and 11% to companies in Asia. Date codes on the components indicated over 3/4 were produced between 2021 and 2023, and the missile could not have been assembled before March last year. Sanctions experts said that the findings were not surprising.
For years, the United States, it's led international efforts to restrict North Korea's ability to obtain parts and funding for its ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs. CAR said its findings showed how difficult it is to control the export of commercial electronic components. As per the investigative organization, it also shows how reliant countries such as North Korea, Russia and Iran are on imported technology.
US uses export controls, it uses sanctions and law enforcement actions to stop Pyongyang acquiring tech for its weapons programs and to prevent Russia from acquiring such arms. The world powers continue to punish North Korea with sanctions, but the pressure has so far failed to push Pyongyang towards reduced arms manufacturing and denuclearization.
And moving on, our US President Joe Biden met with the wife and daughter of late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny in California to express his heartfelt condolences over his death.
Now, Biden also affirmed that the United States will announce major new sanctions against Russia in response to Navalny's death, Russia's repression and aggression, and its war in Ukraine.
This morning I had the honor of meeting with Alexei Navalny's wife and daughter. As to state the obvious, he was a man of incredible courage, and it's amazing how his wife and daughter are emulating that. And we're going to be announcing the sanctions against Putin, who is responsible for his death, tomorrow. And But the one thing that was made clear to me is that Yolanda she's going to continue the fight we had underway. We're not letting up. Thank you.
This comes a day after Alexei Navalny's mother filed a lawsuit demanding release of her son Alexei Navalny's body. In the latest, his mother has now accused Russian investigators of blackmailing her over the funeral of her son.
Navalnaya said officials were trying to force her to hold a private burial ceremony without mourners. She made the allegations in a video published on YouTube in which she accused Russian investigators of telling her, quote-unquote, time is not on your side, corpses decompose. Lyudmila Navalnaya added that officials threatened her to do something with Navalny's body if she does not agree to a secret funeral with no mourners.
They put conditions on me, where, when and how Alexei should be buried. This is illegal. They receive orders from the Kremlin or from the Central Office of the Investigative Committee. They want it done secretly without a memorial service. They want to take me to the edge of the cemetery to a fresh grave and say, here lies your son. I don't agree with that.
Now, according to Navalny's spokesperson, investigators earlier this week told the late activist's family that they plan to conduct a 2-week chemical examination to determine the cause of his death.
However, the spokesperson further claimed that a medical report which Navalny's mother said she had signed indicated that the 47-year-old activist died of natural causes. Navalny, who was Putin's strongest domestic critic, fell unconscious and died suddenly last week after a walk at the Polar Wolf penal colony where he was serving a 3-decade sentence.
On to news and findings from the world of business now. In a world where social media and 24/7 news cycles dominate our attention, millennials and Gen Zers are grappling with a new phenomenon, and that's money dysmorphia.
But despite living in an era of unprecedented access to information, many young adults find themselves plagued by feelings of financial insecurity and inadequacy. But what is money dysmorphia and how can you overcome this? Take a look.
Millennials and Gen Z, often pitted against each other, have one surprising thing in common: money dysmorphia. It's not just another internet trend, it's a real issue impacting their financial decisions. Let's dive deeper and understand why. We've all heard of the Depression-era scarcity mentality. But what about Gen Zs and millennials raised in relative stability? Why the financial anxiety? The truth is, both generations have faced their own challenges: recessions, student loan debt, and a fast-paced, information-saturated world. The social media bombards them with images of luxury and unattainable lifestyles. This constant comparison fuels their anxieties and distorts their perception of their own finances. 45% of millennials and Gen Z surveyed dream of getting rich, often due to this skewed perception. But there's a better way. Instead of chasing a nebulous dream, focus on the numbers, create a budget, set realistic goals, and track your progress. Seek professional help if needed. Financial therapy or a financial planner can offer guidance and support. And remember, disconnect from the social media noise that fuels your anxiety. Focus on your own journey and celebrate your progress, no matter how small. Money dysmorphia may be real, but it doesn't have to define you. Take control, ground yourself in reality, and build a healthy financial future. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, it's time for all the updates from the world of technology. Next, starting with the US Justice Department that has appointed its first AI-focused official. Jonathan Mayer will serve as Chief Science and Technology Advisor and Chief AI Officer.
A professor who researches technology and law at Princeton University, Mayer will advise on AI's impact on law enforcement and the justice system. Not just that, Mayer's role will include advising Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Justice Department leaders on issues related to emerging technologies.
This includes how to responsibly integrate AI into the department's investigations and criminal prosecutions. Mayer will lead a new board advising on AI ethics and effectiveness and aims to recruit more tech experts. He has previously worked as the technology advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris.
Google has temporarily halted its AI model Gemini from creating images of people. This is due to major backlash over inaccurate depictions in the images generated. Gemini, similar to ChatGPT, crafts lifelike images based on user prompts.
Despite being trained to avoid harmful prompts and promote diversity, users criticized its tendency to overemphasize women and people of color, often placing them in historically incorrect scenarios. When prompted to create images of popes and Vikings, the AI chatbot generated inaccurate images of people from ethnic minorities. Users online ridiculed the chatbot for being excessively diverse and ignoring historical facts. Google acknowledged the issue, stating that they're working to improve the depictions. The company plans to pause people's image generation and release an enhanced version soon.
The Food and Drug Administration has issued a warning about smartwatches and smart rings that claim to measure blood sugar levels without pricking the skin. In a communication written by the US agency, FDA has not authorized, cleared or approved any smartwatch or smart ring that is intended to measure or estimate blood glucose values on its own. The FDA has asked consumers, patients and caregivers to stay away from such devices. The Food and Drug Administration has also asked people to report if a company is spotted selling wearables with these claims through the agency's reporting form.